Joe Rogan has been humbled. Commentator and author Douglas Murray appeared on the #1 podcast in the world, the Joe Rogan Experience, where he spectacularly called out Joe Rogan for giving more airtime to anti-Israel guests since the October 7, 2023 Hamas terror attack on Israel.
Since the war in Israel began, and since the war in Ukraine began, you've had quite a lot of people who are very against both in different ways.
Yes.
Do you think you've had enough people on who are supportive of either war?
I don't know that word enough, if that's a good word.
Let's say enough people who are on the side of Israel instead of wild critics of Israel.
Well, I've had a few. I mean, I believe God Sad is on the side of Israel.
For sure.
Jordan is on the side of Israel.
You had Mike Baker, Coleman Hughes.
Yeah.
Coleman did it for like 20 minutes, so it wasn't why he was here.
No, I mean, none of them. And none of them is why they're here. You know, it's a good question.
Do you think you've tilted one way?
Me personally?
No, just with the guests you've had.
The guests, yeah, probably more tilted towards the idea that perhaps the way they've done it is barbaric.
Mm-hmm. But why do you think that is, just out of interest? I'm just interested in your selection of guests, because you're like the world's #1 podcast. So
yeah, it's not... I don't think about it that way. I just think I'd like to talk to this person.
But can I just... it's your show, but
Sure.
If you're going to interview historians of the conflict, or historians in general, why would you get somebody like Ian Carroll or...
Yeah, but...
Online commentators applauded Douglas Murray for his courage to go where no one has gone before, with this person saying, "Douglas Murray does what few men alive would dare. He calls out Joe Rogan in his own studio." This person agrees, saying Joe Rogan is finally getting the criticism he deserves. Douglas Murray should be running the world. Murray then demolished Rogan's other guest, comedian turned pro-Palestine commentator Dave Smith, after he revealed he had never actually been to Israel, despite condemning them for the past 18 months.
I've been plenty of
times.
There was
no deficit?
No, there are
no
plenty
goods were kept out.
There are plenty. How many? Have you been to the crossing points?
No.
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
You've never been?
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can.
Right.
But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point? Like,
no,
okay.
I find that
lots of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so
if
I don't
you're
know
going to
what
spend a year and a half talking about a place, you should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
All right. I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't
but
think?
Okay. No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're
Well, you have to go and touch the ground.
No, I think you have to see. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you spend a career talking about something. Yes.
Commentators were split on the exchange, with this person saying, "You totally missed the point, you muppet. He is purporting himself an expert on what is happening now, but has not even made any effort to be there and find out, unlike Douglas Murray, who has." This person disagrees, saying, "This is a low blow from Douglas. He's struggling to get him on actual points, so he tries to belittle his authority with his non-argument. Bad faith from Murray." Philosopher Sam Harris also weighed in and agreed with Douglas Murray, saying Joe Rogan has good intentions, but is out of his depth.
Joe is a genuinely good guy who wants good things for people, but he is honestly in over his head on so many topics of great consequence, right? When he brings someone on to just shoot the shit about how the Holocaust is not what you think it was, right? And maybe Churchill's the bad guy in World War II.
Is that Tucker?
Or he's got Dave Smith, being treated as an expert on Israel and Palestine and the history of that conflict and the moral emergency that came to the world's attention on October 7th. And what is appropriate to think in the aftermath of all of that, right? Dave Smith is the only reason why anyone knows what Dave Smith thinks about any of this is very likely because Joe had him on multiple times to talk about it, right? He's a pure misinformation artist and on top of many others. And when Joe talks to someone like Trump or Tucker Carlson or any of these other guys who lie as freely as they breathe and doesn't push back against any of their lies. In fact, in Trump's case, really fairly energetically helped put his lies into the most plausible possible shape. It is irresponsible. I mean, it is directly harmful. Our society is as politically shattered as it is, in part because of how Joe has interacted with information.
Douglas Murray has been a vocal and passionate critic of Hamas since the devastating events of October 7th and continues to blame the terror group for escalating tensions in the region.
Well, it's sort of par for the course, unfortunately. Hamas has repeatedly broken its side of the deals in the stage one of the ceasefire agreement. We saw that not least in its obscene handover ceremonies of Israeli hostages, including its obscene parading of the coffin of Israeli babies in front of jubilant crowds in Gaza the other week, on top of the war crimes that Hamas has committed by abducting and torturing and killing Israeli citizens. It's, of course, continued to commit war crimes during this phase of the ceasefire deal. Phase two of the ceasefire deal, by the way, has always been a problem because it requires Hamas to hand over all the remaining hostages, as they should have done on October the 8th, 2023. But it requires them to do so and for Israeli troops to withdraw completely from the Gaza. Now, the problem for that is, of course, is that Hamas, although it's been significantly degraded, is, as we've seen from these obscene handover ceremonies, not completely destroyed in Gaza. And there is therefore a likelihood, an inevitability, that Hamas would continue to rule or misgovern the Gaza, which is intolerable to the Israelis because the Israelis had two stated war aims from the beginning of this war. Number one, to get back every hostage stolen from their homes by Hamas, and two, to destroy Hamas. And you just can't allow Hamas to remain in power. The Israelis can't. The various countries in the region condemn that is completely unsurprising. That's sort of what they have to say, even as in some cases they're urging Israel on. The fact that France would criticize Israel, among other Western countries, is also unsurprising, sadly. It'll be interesting to see next time France fights a war, when it does, whether it holds its army to the kind of accountability that the Israelis do theirs. My own observation of French military action in the Côte d'Ivoire and the Middle East and elsewhere is that they do exactly what they want and they don't listen to any international condemnation. So, sad as it is to say, perhaps the Israelis should ignore the French just as the French tend to ignore the world.